Welcome everybody to our session on veganism. And today, both David Crone, our upcoming president, and Sarah Eifler from Jewish Veg are going to be presenting to us, and we'll have room for questions towards the end. So welcome. I think David's going to start. And if you want to see David, go to speaker view on the top right-hand corner of your screen.
Well, hello, everyone. It's great to see you. I guess I'll just share my personal thoughts. I think you just blew me up. Now I'm seeing myself. I mean, this is all very personal, so I'm not used to speaking out about it. But I do think we're at a really exciting time. Just in the past couple of 2-3 years, technology has made available all kinds of options that were never available before. And the trajectory that I'm looking at, I mean, as far as food options, and the trajectory is that things are going to get better and better and less expensive and more, and possibly even more convenient. So, you know, I don't know if all of you were at Shabbat when Sarah spoke, but we do have within the Jewish tradition compassion for animals built into the Torah. And like a lot of things in the Torah is, you know, one of the ways to read the Torah and the Haftorah stories is we have values that we kind of seize and hold dear, and then we drift away, and then we come back, and then we drift away, and we come back. And that's kind of happened throughout our history. And some of the prophets are like trying to drag us back to our earlier values. But at many points, you know, in the Torah or when the prophets talk about animals, they don't objectify them. They give them value. They need to be treated, you know, with compassion, with mercy. Cruelty is to be avoided. All of the things that Sarah talked about as far as, you know, what's permitted, what's not permitted. And even in some perverse ways, like when God says that somebody has to go and destroy everybody who's in a city, he also says, you know, destroy the animals. So my point is that animals have value in the Torah. They're not treated like plants. They're not treated like things. So I guess what I wanted to bring forward is that, hey Oliver, come on in. Oliver's just going to visit with us for a little bit.
Hi, Oliver.
Hello.
Hey, Oliver.
So Oliver's been vegan since he was born, actually before he was born.
Hi, Oliver.
Hello.
Hello.
And we're living at a time when I think the fulcrum is starting to turn. And you know, I think that in a couple of generations, people will be looking back on how people are eating today and thinking it's odd and being grateful to live in an age where that isn't happening. I grew up I spent my career as an environmental scientist. I can say with great assurance that animal agriculture is the biggest contributor to degradation of the environment. You remember the rabbi's sermon on Rosh Hashanah. Not only is it the biggest contributor, it's also the easiest to make a personal difference. Those of you who recycle to protect the environment, I can tell you, I'm a waste management expert, I can tell you that changing your diet, and it doesn't mean 100%, it doesn't have to be 100%, but changing your diet significantly can make far more of an impact than virtually anything else you can do, unless you're, you know, driving 18-wheeler trucks across the country every day, or maybe flying to Massachusetts every week. I mean, those would have a bigger effect, but your food decisions are actually quite powerful in protecting the world, restoring the landscape. If people ate less animals, less animal products, we would have so much more land available for wilderness. Because when animals are, when we consume animals or their products, we have to feed them, and they're not very efficient. So if we eat it directly, it saves tremendous amounts of resources. And then also the waste products associated with animals pollute the air very significantly. You've probably heard about the methane from cows, so that's a real thing. But also the wastes that pollute our groundwater very substantially with nitrate, which is the most important water pollutant that we have. It closes more wells than any other pollutant. And it's very difficult to manage properly, and it's frankly not affordable. Animal agriculture is highly subsidized by the government, and frankly, without those subsidies, it wouldn't be competitive the way it is. So the way we think of it as an economic choice, I think, is really misleading because the costs are hidden. We don't pay at all for the pollution. It's called an externality if you're an economist. And we're not paying the full price. So, you know, just sort of my general observations. I guess the other thing is, you know, when we think about the Jewish experience, we tend to think about, you know, the heritage that most of us in the congregation probably received from Europe. And that, you know, that's a heritage born of poverty. That's a heritage, those diets were born of deprivation. When I was growing up, I grew up in the South, and we had friends who were Black, and they still had their farm, the family farm from after the Civil War. And we would go there, and they would sit there, and they would prepare chitlins, and you know, they observed their heritage, but it's not something they ate every day. It was just, and it's not something they really, you know, got excited about. It was just, they were coasting. And I think in some of what we think of Jewish food is, we're coasting, which isn't always a bad thing. But if that's all we're doing, we're not looking at the tremendous vibrancy of, first of all, the international Jewish experience, where we have Sephardic Jews, Jews from all over the world who have incorporated the cultures that they're in and created foods which are also Jewish. And then the Israeli experience. Israel is now the most vegan country in the world. It's about 5%, last I saw, and it's growing very, very, very quickly. Restaurants, food types, you know, there's a revolution happening there. And I'm not saying that, you know, the whole country is going vegan or vegetarian tomorrow, but the fulcrum is turning because there are more opportunities, because there are new ingredients. We can afford to do this. It wasn't something we could afford in the desert, right? We needed to have that security of having access to protein in the desert. We're not at that point anymore. We're at a turning point in our history, I think. How fast it turns, I'm not sure, but we have an opportunity to be a part of it. So, did you have anything you want to say? No. All right. He's allowed to disagree with me about anything, by the way. He will. Okay, Sarah?
All right, thank you, David. So first of all, I just want to second everything that David said, and I will be touching on some of those points as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen. So I have a little presentation for you designed to basically walk us through what some of the issues with animal agriculture are, just so that you can really kind of see what we're talking about when we talk about these big systems. And the point of that is so that we can then look at what the solutions are. So we're going to walk through a little bit of the stuff that's maybe you know, a little less fun, and then we're going to get to the good stuff. So that's what I'm going to do with you right now. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, are you all seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool, thanks. All right, so I want to start by talking about water. We started last week, I talked about the Parsha of Noah and the flood, and I mentioned during my drash that the metaphor of the flood could today be likened to something like our water use, our excessive water use, our poison groundwaters. We really are doing a lot of damage to our water systems. In Judaism, water is really recognized as being central to life. We have prayers specifically for water. We pray for rain. We also, during the dry season, we pray for dew. So we have a sense of the natural cycle of the waters. We also have legends and stories about water, like Miriam's well. So we have this concept in Judaism that we're aware of the importance of water. So I want to talk a little bit about what happens to our water systems with animal agriculture. In the United States, meat consumption accounts for 30% of our water footprint. That is to say, about a third of the entirety of the water that we use in the United States comes as a result of raising animals for slaughter and consumption. So you know how you live in California, you have droughts and wildfires, and you know that one of the things that happens when there's a drought is you get asked to not use your sprinklers or not take as many showers. It takes about 1,800 gallons of water to make 1 pound of beef. 1 pound of beef, 1,800 gallons of water. That's about 100 showers. So every time you hear that you're being asked to take fewer showers or take shorter showers, think about if you just didn't eat 1 pound of beef, that's the equivalent of not taking 100 showers. That's how these systems work, that they are in such large scale, there are such massive damaging systems that they can really cause these horrible outcomes to our environment. And by choosing not to participate in them, we really alleviate and mitigate some of that damage. So producing 1 kilogram of animal protein requires about 100 times more water than 1 kilogram of grain protein. So the equivalent amount of eating plants that you get the same nutrients and calories from, you can use 100 times less water. And by the way, I just want to mention, I do have sources for everything that I'm quoting here, so please do feel free to ask me for those. I'm only putting the name of the source in the ones I directly quote, but I do have sources for everything I'm sharing today. I also want to talk about, as David mentioned, I want to talk about waste. So the pollution that happens because of animal agriculture. 369 million tons of manure from the largest CAFOs in the United States. CAFO stands for Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation. That is almost 13 times the waste of the entire United States population, which is to say, this is from the largest CAFOs in the United States, so not even all of the CAFOs. We basically have a major problem with the amount of waste that is produced by animal agriculture, that we just have too much of it. We don't know what to do with it. There's too much, and there's nowhere to put it. So what happens is it kind of gets left around, and then it gets washed into the water system, and it goes into our groundwater, and it causes massive damage. David mentioned nitrates. You're really messing with the chemical composition of the ground, of the soil, of the water, and all of the antibiotics, the chemicals, the hormones, everything that goes into creating this animal, because keep in mind, animals are raised to create more meat than they would naturally grow. So all that kind of goes into that animal to make that happen is ending up in our water. And that is extremely damaging to human health. One of the reasons that we end up with diseases like E. coli on our lettuce is because of this waste problem, and because these animals are not healthy, they're not treated well, and they end up spreading those sicknesses around. And I also want to talk briefly about another major problem with water that I feel gets overlooked a lot, which is to do with overfishing, bycatch, habitat destruction, basically what happens to our oceans. I live on Cape Cod, and Cape Cod is named for the cod. It was said that you used to be able to walk from mainland Cape Cod, where I live, to Martha's Vineyard, one of our islands, on the backs of the cod. There are no more cod on Cape Cod. In about 30 years, between 1960 and 1990, overfishing resulted in a biomass loss of 99% of the cod living here on Cape Cod. It's been 30 years since then. we still don't have cod here. I used to work at a hotel, and they would outsource the cod from Iceland. They had to order it in. So overfishing is extremely damaging to ecosystems. And what happens is when you lose any species like that, then the prey species, so in this case, snow crabs and shrimp, kind of exploded. And that really changes the ecosystem. And it's a very, very delicate system that we have in our oceans. You're seeing damage to our coral reefs. You're seeing damage to the populations of fish throughout the ocean. There's no going back from stuff like that. So overfishing is extremely dangerous. Bycatch, a lot of fishing aggregate devices, which are kind of the large commercial fishing equipment that they use, they will catch things like sea turtles, marlins, rays, seabirds, a lot of endangered species. And again, habitat destruction, destroying the oceans through fishing. So I just wanted to make sure that we are also talking about some of the major environmental damage that's happening to our oceans. So I'll talk a little bit about land as well. And I think David talked a little bit about this, but I really want to talk about this concept because it's a very Jewish concept. So I don't know if you've heard of Bal Tashchit, which is kind of considered the Jewish environmental law. But it basically means do not destroy. And it comes from this teaching that if there is a fruit tree in a time of war, that you're not allowed to cut down the fruit tree. Why are you not allowed to cut down the fruit tree? Because all of the fruit that tree would go on to produce, you're now losing. You no longer have that fruit. That tree can no longer produce that fruit. So that's this concept called opportunity food loss. So in today's terms, an area of land that can produce 100 grams of plant protein can produce just 4 grams of beef protein, a 96% loss. So that concept of Bal Tashchit, this very Jewish concept that even, in the time of the Torah, people recognized the importance of not wasting land or food, really applies today in terms of how we are using our land. And again, David mentioned this, the amount of land that factory farms take up, which is really dangerous in a lot of ways. So they take up 83% of all available farmland in the world. Without them, we could reduce our global farmland use by more than 75% and still feed the world. So this is an issue of food justice, of global hunger, of poverty, and we are now facing a pandemic caused by this. Because what happens is when you clear land to make room for factory farms, you push people further and further and further into the margins, into the wildlands where people haven't been, and where really massive changes are happening and habitat destruction is happening. That puts people in closer contact with the wild animals. And it's the perfect condition for something called spillover, which is when a disease that is in a non-human animal host moves into a human host. That's what happened with COVID-19. So the amount of land that is used in order to create factory farms, like the burning of the Amazon that they're doing for cattle ranchers, that's really dangerous for humans on so many levels, as well as obviously very destructive to our environment. I also want to talking about issues of food and hunger. 70% of the grain that we grow in the United States is fed to livestock, not to people. And in making this land and allowing for all of this grain to be grown, we end up overgrazing our pasture lands, and then that land becomes subject to accelerated erosion. Also, the biodiversity of the crops that would grow there or the plants that would grow there are now being wiped out, and that leads to a mass extinction of wildlife. And finally, as David mentioned, carbon emissions. So livestock is responsible for 18% of all greenhouse gas emissions globally. That's more than the entire transportation sector combined, as he was saying. Unless you are taking a plane every once a week to fly to the opposite ends of the country, you cannot possibly be causing as much greenhouse gas emissions from your transportation as you would by participating in the animal agriculture industry. All right, bear with me, just a little bit more of the bad stuff and then we're going to get to the good stuff. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about animals. and I promise I'm going to keep it brief. But I just want to make sure that we know what we're talking about when we talk about factory farms. And I particularly want to talk about chickens today and eggs, partly because I get to bring in more Jewish concepts, and that's my favorite, but also because the chickens really do undergo some of the worst conditions in factory farms. So we have a concept in Judaism called Shluach HaKen. It's a mitzvah, it's a commandment. It's one of our very few positive commandments. And it's that when you take an egg from a nest, that you're meant to wave away the mother bird so that she doesn't see it. The idea being that the bird feels pain, emotional pain at the loss of her egg. What happens in factory farms is that chickens are in little crates. They never get to go outside, they never get to spread their wings, and there's a conveyor belt underneath them. And so the chickens who are made to overproduce eggs to a really extreme amount, the eggs go onto this conveyor belt and they get moved away from the chicken, and that emotional pain that our tradition recognizes and commands us not to inflict on an animal, that's every single day she's seeing that's happening to her, not to mention the physical pain. Producing eggs is something, it's like a woman's menstruation. It's only meant to happen naturally in the body once a month. These chickens are laying eggs every day. The amount of calcium and other nutrients that are taken from their bodies in order to produce the eggs is really extreme. And finally, just another quick thing about this, which is that to the industry, male chicks are useless, which means that the ones that do hatch, that are allowed to hatch, if they're male, they're killed, and in really horrible, graphic ways. So the concept of free-range eggs or humane eggs, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but basically, it doesn't really exist. Any eggs or chicken or meat or anything that you're buying from this industry is tied into this system. The same goes for cows and dairy. Cows produce milk just like humans do for their babies, just like all mammals do. They only produce milk when they have a baby to feed with that milk. So what happens in the dairy industry, the calves are taken away from the mothers as soon as they're born, and the males are slaughtered for veal. The females become dairy cows themselves. And same thing as with the chickens, they are forced to overproduce. They're constantly in this cycle of being impregnated, giving birth, having the baby taken away over and over again. It's honestly, emotionally, let alone physically, it's a really horrible system for these animals to be living their whole lives in. So what about kosher meat? I get this question a lot. Doesn't kosher mean higher standards? You're not going to be surprised to hear me say no. The kosher industry is a slaughter industry. It is not a raising animals industry, which is to say that the same animals that are slaughtered for kosher meat are the ones raised in these concentrated animal feeding operations that are doing so much damage to the environment and that are harming the animals in this way. That's on top of the fact that kosher slaughter was designed to basically not be industrial. You really can't be sure that you are following all of the laws of kashrut in creating kosher meat because it's just not an industrialized system. And again, on top of that, if these animals are living lives that violate Tza'ar Ba'alei Chaim, the principle that we are meant to prevent the suffering of animals, then it's not really kosher anyway. And the same goes for, you can see it's in scare quotes here, humane meat. It's just not a real thing. There's no oversight. There's nothing to really, if someone says something is humane or higher welfare, there are no real standards. And you just cannot get, at this point in time, you cannot get animal products that are outside of these systems. Okay. I wanted to share this picture of a rescued turkey at the Freedom Farm Sanctuary in Israel. This is Lily. And so I just wanted to show you, first of all, because Thanksgiving is coming up, so I thought it would just be appropriate to share a turkey. But you can just see how happy and relaxed and content this turkey is. She's been rescued from a farm where she was being raised for slaughter. And she is kind of settled in the dirt there. She's outside. She's enjoying the sunlight. She's enjoying getting some pets. She was very friendly. She kind of followed us around for a little bit, and then she kind of went off to do her thing. So there is hope for these animals. There are amazing sanctuaries out there taking care of animals who are surrendered or rescued from these factory farms and slaughterhouses, and they go on to live really happy, fulfilling lives. Okay, I've gotten through the depressing stuff, so it all gets better from here. So let's talk about us. Let's talk about our health. Our bodies are all about balance. So like the earth, like the oceans, we are a delicate ecosystem. Our bodies are a variety of systems that need to be kept in balance. So this is a short list, and it's actually, I kind of went a little understated here. Eating plant-based has been proven to lower cholesterol, reduce risk of heart disease and type 2 diabetes, prevent certain kinds of cancer, and assist with chronic and autoimmune disease by reducing inflammation. Again, that's kind of a short list and an understated list. It's actually been proven that in some cases, eating plant-based can reverse type 2 diabetes, and there are doctors who have said that lupus in particular is a condition that you can no longer suffer from through a plant-based diet. Really amazing what it does for your body when you are able to take care of yourself and eat whole foods. So I get this question a lot, what about protein? So quick explanation of what's going on with this question. Basically, the American diet is really over-focused on protein. Most Americans get too much protein. So if you've heard of ketosis, like the keto diet, what's happening is actually that your kidneys are shutting down. That's what causes ketosis. So it's really damaging your kidneys. And really what you're supposed to have is about like 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight, like very, very much lower than what the average American gets. But there's protein in plants. There is, in fact, way more protein in plants than you probably know or realize. When you think about it, the protein that you're getting from animal sources, they had to get from somewhere, and that's from the plants that they eat. So it's a lot more efficient to just eat the plants directly and get your nutrients from the plants than to go through the middle cow, so to speak, and get all the saturated fat and cholesterol that comes with that as well. So a healthy, balanced diet is going to include dark leafy greens, colorful vegetables, legumes, so beans, nuts, and things like that, whole grains, and fruits. You do not need anything else. That's it right here. That's what a healthy, balanced diet is going to look like. Now, it was Halloween yesterday. Of course, I had candy. This is not the only thing you're ever going to eat if you eat plant-based. But you can do a lot more with these basic ingredients than you probably have thought of. And I am more than happy to share recipes and guidance with you on that. So David talked a little bit about what a cool and exciting time we're in, that we are seeing major advances. You have probably heard of these two. Beyond and Impossible, you've probably seen their burgers around. You know you can get them from Burger King even, or all the other fast food chains. I'm not sure which ones are popular in California. So you can see the way that this is really kind of taking off, that we're really seeing so many different plant-based foods coming out and being available to people. This is a short list of available milk alternatives: oat milk, soy milk, rice milk, almond milk, flax milk, hemp milk, macadamia milk. I could go on. So basically what happens with these is that instead of having, again, the saturated fat, the cholesterol, all of the really dense and heavy nutrients that go into cow's milk, again, which is made for a baby to help a baby grow really quickly, you're instead getting kind of this light, low impact liquid that tastes and feels like milk. It's fortified just like cow's milk is, with vitamin D, with calcium, and with other nutrients. So cow's milk is also fortified with those things. They're not naturally occurring in cow's milk. And you're able to bake with them to do everything that you would with regular milk. And so this concept that you have to give something up in order to eat plant-based, definitely no longer true. There's possible there was a time when I became vegan 16 years ago and there was not good vegan cheese. We're no longer in that time. You can have incredible vegan cheese now. It's amazing. I just had some. So we are really in, as David was saying, an exciting and new time to be able to try this out. And the world's seeing that. So in the past year, retail sales of plant-based foods have grown 11.4%. This statistic is from May, so it's possible it's increased since then. People are really seeing that there is a significant impact on the environment, on people's health. People care about the animals and they want to see plant-based foods succeed. And now we are at a time where that is possible. And a lot of that has to do with Israel. Israel has more vegans per capita at 5% than anywhere else in the world. We all know Israel has a thriving tech industry. And I know he's not here, but I did promise Canner Bob a plant-based steak. So Redefined Meat has created a 3D printed plant-based steak. And I just want to say, when we're in a world where a 3D printed plant-based steak is possible, anything is possible. So here is a picture for you. So I want to talk a little bit now about Temple Bethel and kind of bring it back to this community. So what does it mean for you to be able to have vegan options? So the obvious thing here, vegan options are universal. Vegans can have them, vegetarians can have them, omnivores can have them, everyone can have them. And for people with allergies, if they need gluten-free or nut-free, that's easily accommodated as well. So it's useful. Basically, anyone who comes into your synagogue is able to have the vegan option. It's also always kosher. That's helpful, so you don't have the headache and a half of trying to coordinate, you know, what the meat dishes with the dairy dishes. You never have to worry about it. But really importantly, what this does is it helps normalize eating veg in a Jewish context. And that's important because of what David mentioned at the start, that we have this narrative or this concept of what Jewish food is. And a lot of that comes from what we grew up around and what we continue to see in our synagogues and in our Jewish institutions. And if all we're ever seeing is meat and brisket, then, you know, that's what we assume Jewish food is. But if we start showing plant-based foods alongside the other options and just make it available, it'll start to seem normal and usual to have a vegan option in a Jewish context. And that means the next generation is going to be used to it and it will make a big change. Vegan options also offer a different way to interact with food. This is important because in America in particular, we have this concept, we have this relationship with food that's really kind of laden with guilt and shame. And it's not a fun way to eat or live. You know, that's the diet industry is what it is because it's been able to kind of make people feel guilty about the food that they eat. But having a vegan option gives you a chance to look at things differently. If you're eating a salad, if you're eating, one of the recipes I want to show you is this chickpea tart. If you're eating something that's kind of new and plant-based and fun and tastes good and looks amazing, it also lets you think about, you know, the amount of water that you have saved by eating this meal, the way that you are being able to interact with the world, the natural world in a better way, the animals that are going to be able to live out their lives because of the meals that you choose. And that's a really different lens to see your food. So I think it offers a really important psychological shift for us to be able to eat in a kinder and more sustainable way. And so I want to talk a little bit about a program that we have at Jewish Veg called Vegan Option Always. So this is what I want to offer to you and to your community. We have over 60 recipes that are in 12 categories organized by holiday and event type. So the purpose of this program is exactly what I was sharing on the last slide, just to have a vegan option at every event. That also includes free direct consultation with Jewish Veg staff. So anytime you have questions, concerns, problems, anything, you come directly to me and I fix it for you. We can make vegan brisket. We can make vegan challah. We can make vegan gefilte fish, although I don't know why you would want us to. Any food that you love and want to see made vegan, we can do that for you. We can veganize anything. And we also have these recipes ready to go right off the bat. I've mentioned that it's healthier, I've mentioned that it's more environmentally friendly, but it's also cheaper. The recipes that we offer at Vegan Option Always are whole foods plant-based for the most part, which is to say that they are using ingredients that are natural, simple, good for you, and are going to cost a lot less than things like steak and brisket and chicken and all sorts of plant food or animal foods. So it's going to actually end up saving your congregation money to have a vegan option. And this program is completely customizable for your community. And that's what I would like us to spend the time to talk about now, which is what Temple Bethel can do and wants to do around this concept of having vegan options. So before I get us going in a discussion, I want to ask the Rabbi if you would like to go ahead and say something.
Well, you've convinced me. I'm not having another glass of milk or another egg because I'm already a vegetarian, but that's it. I'm done. Seriously. Because I mean, it was from reading an article in the New York Times Magazine many years ago about, beef factories. And then seeing something, I think it was actually on Jon Stewart, about chickens that got me to stop eating meat. And now, even though I sort of knew this about eggs and milk, that's it. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyhow, no, I think that it's good to start here with a smaller group. And then I think at some point, David should probably bring it up to the board as something that, we should come up with some kind of plan of how do we, at the moment, we're not serving any food, obviously, but we have a lot of, dinners and things like that, and onegs where, things are not necessarily vegan. And there's always a vegan option, but it's not, kind of in the culture. So I think that's something we could, bring up at some point. So, but do people have questions or comments or ideas about how we might incorporate these ideas in our synagogue? Lori?
Well, I had David look up for me how to use chia seeds to thicken eggs. So I'm going to try some of my cake recipes with them. And
You'll be margarine with the result.
And see how they turn out.
Amazing.
Excellent.
And it's going to be hard for me to give up cheese, you guys. I don't think you can make brie.
You can. You can. There is vegan brie. I can send you a link.
Okay.
I know, I love cheese myself, so I get it.
Now, there's some terrific nut cheeses that, it's not brie that we can get locally, but it hits the spot, I think. So I sent you a couple of ideas.
Yeah, you did.
So, and they're new, they're different. They're a little bit different, but different can be better.
Yeah.
Can I tell you, I don't know how many people here have had a Beyond or an Impossible Burger. They taste exactly like hamburger.
I haven't, and I don't like burgers to begin with, so it's not an issue for me. I can give up meat easily.
And the other thing is there are chicken strips now made out of whatever that taste exactly like chicken. So if you are, nostalgic for meat, you can easily find stuff to replace it. I don't know about the 3D steak. That's an interesting idea there.
I haven't tried that one either, I'll be honest. But the other thing I just want to say is that, two things, I guess. One is that a lot of the flavor, the taste, the texture of meat dishes that you love, or even things like cheese, it's all about the cooking. It's all about the preparation. And so you can really make those in different ways. The other, and this is something that I feel like it's hard to explain to people before you experience it. But when you shift your diet to include more whole foods, include more plants, in whatever way works best for you, you really find that your horizons expand. You find yourself making different things, trying different things, really being able to appreciate foods from different cultures. We had an event earlier today at Jewish vegan recipes from around the world, and some of those recipes are incredible. Definitely recommend you check it out. But you really find all these kind of different things that you can try, and you don't realize that you fall into this rut with your eating in some cases. And so it's a really great opportunity to try something new and just see if you like it.
Cool. So any questions, comments, ideas about how we can bring this to our congregation? Rusty?
Go ahead, Rusty.
Well, just whenever I think about these things and hear presentations like this, yes, I mean, I'm always completely persuaded, and I agree that in a couple of generations, they'll look back at the way we eat and they'll just think it's outrageously, disgustingly overdoing everything. But, you know, I've spent my whole life here, and there's 3 or 4 places around the corner for me where I can get a cheeseburger like that. And, you know, I often succumb to the temptation. But like, I remember, it's interesting that, Sarah, you said that in Israel, they've got more vegans per capita than anywhere else. Because when I lived in Israel, first of all, the hamburgers weren't very good. This was 1989, 1990. Back then, but the point is the falafel was great. And I was eating falafel for lunch and hummus for dinner. And actually that is overdoing the chickpeas. You got to spread out a little. But anyway, the point is, when there were really nice vegetarian options available, no one had to twist my arm or give me a talk. It was just good food, lunch or dinner, you know, it's easy to stock them, whatever. But America right now, you know, it's all the wrong messages. It's all the wrong temptations. You see the ads for hamburgers on TV, and they're heaping one patty on another with onion rings and God knows what else. But anyway, yeah, it's just, well, the most important thing I always take away from this is just incrementalism, one dish at a time, one day at a time. Let's have more of the right things and less of the wrong things. So this was very helpful. I wrote down some things to tell my wife, like substitutes for milk. She's already doing soy milk, but we might try some of the others.
Rusty, if I could respond, a lot of people, people do get shut down. They feel like, well, if I can't be perfect, why am I bothering? And you don't have to be perfect. I mean, if somebody needs to eat cheese for whatever reason from dairies, then they should do that. If they need to have a cheeseburger once in a while, and that's the problem, you know, you can do that. Although I would mention that you can get a vegan cheeseburger at Carl's Jr. You can get one at Burger King if you leave off the mayo. You can get one Monty's. No, you can't get a cheeseburger. If you want a cheeseburger, the best place to go is Monty's at the Riverside Food Lab. They're nationally famous, and you won't find. I don't think you're going to find anything better.
Cool.
There's also Plant Power downtown. Now those aren't right around the corner from you, but I think Carl's is. But you're right; they're not going to have cheese. So you know, have them put on the cheese if you need the cheese, or bring your own cheese. There's vegan cheese that works just fine. This isn't a big deal.
You know what, David, speaking of Judaism, I mean, that's what we recommend for people about observing Shabbat. You don't have to do it, you know, 25 hours. You can do a couple of hours here and there and, you know, kind of work incrementally to add to your practice. So you don't have to go to every Torah study once in a while, you know, same kind of idea. But I think, Lori, you had something to say?
Yeah, I have questions. Where do you shop for all this stuff? Do you go to Loma Linda or what? You said
Okay,
you could buy
Loma Linda is great, but there's a Clark's here in Riverside downtown. Target for like meat products, veggie chickens, and those kinds of things.
What's the name of it?
What, the products?
No, the place. Is it at Clark's?
Clark's downtown.
Yeah, I
It's
know
the
where
same
Clark's
as the one in Loma Linda. It's just a
Yeah, I know
smaller
where
one.
Clark's is. Yeah.
But Target actually has a tremendous selection of veggie meats, as well as vegan ice cream
Okay.
that are really good. Ben and Jerry's is now, they have a wide variety of things that are vegan.
Huh.
I know, right?
Including ice cream?
So Costco has better
Yeah,
than
they have like what 6 or 9 vegan Ben and Jerry's flavors now.
It's crazy.
It might be
Yeah.
more.
Cool.
They're great, and
Yeah,
it's not just Ben and Jerry's. There's a bunch of companies now.
Uh-huh.
Find them at Target, and they're affordable. This is a long answer because there's so many opportunities right now.
Probably Sprouts has them too.
Yeah.
Sprouts
Sprouts
a
and
lot,
even
yeah.
some Stater Brothers, like Stater Brothers here in Rancho Cucamonga. I can, even though Sprouts is across the street, but it's busier, I probably get 90% of what I need at Stater Brothers. Not every Stater Brothers, it depends upon what they're pulling in, but I get a lot of my vegan, I get a lot of veggie and vegan options actually at Stater Brothers. And you
But
wouldn't think
Stater-
it would be at Stater Brothers, but it's
Right.
there. So
Stater Brothers by me has some stuff too.
You know, one way to not have this problem of these, if you're looking at health too, all these fake meats and fake cheeses are really not all that healthy. They may be good as transition flavor wise, but if you just skip all that, and it takes a little while for your taste buds to adjust, and but that in the long run is the easiest way and the healthiest too. Just skip the fake
Yeah, I
foods.
definitely think it's worth pointing out that like a Beyond Burger is not a health food per se. It is much healthier than a hamburger, but you know,
Right.
it's not the sort of thing you want to be eating every day necessarily
Right.
if you are looking to kind of get all those benefits I mentioned about the diseases that plant-based eating can help with and prevent. Basically, as whole foods, plant-based as you can get is the healthiest you can get,
Right.
with the understanding that your mental health matters too. And if you need comfort food every once in a while, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Very common for a new vegan to feel with withdrawal symptoms, especially from dairy. And there are biological reasons for that, but there can be emotional withdrawal as well. And all I can say is that it fades. It really fades. But again, if you know, our eating is part of our senses, smell is part of our senses, goes very deep into our lives, and we need to respect it. And so, yeah, it's that's something that you need. Those needs are available from a plant-based sources. But it's true, it's not as healthy. But again, it's, you know, everything in moderation. It's not terrible either. It's just everything in moderation.
So I did a bunch of people at work. Pretty much everybody at work eats meat. We had a big Mexican fiesta party right before COVID, and I brought my jackfruit tacos. And now no matter what event we have, all they say is, please bring the jackfruit tacos. Those were the best things ever. It was 100% vegan. Everything about it was amazing. And people still talk about it. So now what I do is every event I bring something else for them to try. And invariably people go, oh, will you make that again? The avocado chocolate pudding, which I think is amazing. I didn't know if anybody else would like it. And it was another huge winner. And it was with carob. It wasn't even with chocolate. It was like carob and avocado. And so there's little things. I'll get little lists on my desk. Hey, next event, will you bring the avocado chocolate pudding? Will you bring the, you know, whatever it might be? And I think it's through that and through people's taste buds that people recognize, oh, this is awesome. And then I always leave the recipe on how people can make it themselves and where they can find the different things. And then people can slowly begin to make transitions and also adjust their taste buds. So
That's great. And Doug,
I
it
do
really
wanna
looks like,
We'll bring stuff to the bagel brunch, and it goes quick. So the vegans jump to the front of the line sometimes just so we have something to eat.
Yeah, I know that feel. I do want to offer for anyone who's interested in a personal help with you know, going more plant-based. We do have a program for that. I'm putting in the chat right now. It's called Plant Pathways, and any form of any path you want to take, any transition that you want to make, it does not by any means have to be go fully vegan tomorrow. but it's there designed to provide community as that's a major Jewish value in and of itself for people who are interested. And we offer recipes, guidance, advice. It's facilitated by me, so you already know the person running it. So anyone who's interested, please feel free to check that out.
Thank you.
Could you talk about your opt-in idea for temple events? That
Yeah,
that
sure.
you start off sort of on a carve basis, and then if people want to add meat or dairy, they can.
Yeah, so I think you're referring to default veg.
Yeah.
Right, that is not a Jewish veg program, but it's absolutely one that we highly recommend. So it's called Default Veg, and it is a program that basically, when you have an event or a conference or something like that, the option that you offer to everyone is vegan in itself, with full description of the food. This is what we're going to serve, and then there's a little checkbox for I want a meat option. And so anyone who wants the meat option checks that. So it's kind of the inverse of what usually happens, that the vegan meal gets marked as separate and other, and doesn't get a description. It's the other way around. If Temple Beth El is interested in default veg, I am more than happy to get Alana Braverman, who is the kind of head of that program, to help you set that up. It's a really brilliant program. And it's a really great way of going about it because it makes it the default that, that's what comes first.
While respecting everyone.
Exactly. Yeah. Having an option for people who want to have the meat, like it's there. It's just, you have to take the extra step to mark that off.
Good trick.
Yep.
Are there any last comments or questions? I thought this was a great presentation. Thank you so much. The one about 1 pound of beef is equivalent to 100 showers,
Mm-hmm.
and some other ones. So I think we have to keep that in mind when we decide what we're going to eat. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been so great to be able to come and join you several times now. I feel like I'm part of the community. So thank you for having me. And again, any questions, anything that comes up, if you want to reach out to me, I'll put my email address in the chat. But I am always around.
And you're welcome to come to our services anytime. Of course, they're a
Thank
little
you.
late for you, but anyway, thanks so much again.
Yeah.